The last person I expected to see at Dad's funeral was Deanna's husband, Mark. He stood at the back of the church, shifting uncomfortably in his expensive suit, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, which made sense, considering Diana had told everyone they'd divorced 6 months ago. But there he was, very much married to my sister, judging by the gold band still on his finger. I'm Grace Henderson, and at 35, I was about to learn that everything I thought I knew about my family was a carefully constructed lie. "Stop staring," Diana hissed, appearing beside me in a designer black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "He's here to pay his respects, that's all." I turned to my sister, studying her face, the face that had convinced our father I'd stolen money from his accounts, the face that had somehow persuaded him to change his will 24 hours before he died. "Funny," I said quietly. "You told Dad that Mark left you, that you needed extra support because of the divorce. That's why he increased your monthly allowance, right?" Her perfectly painted lips tightened. "This isn't the time, Grace." No, it wasn't. We were supposed to be mourning our father, Richard Henderson, successful real estate developer and pillar of the community. Instead, I was standing in our family church, watching my sister's web of lies slowly unravel. The service passed in a blur of hymns and eulogies. Diana gave a touching speech about Dad's generosity, her voice breaking at all the right moments. I sat silently in the front pew, remembering our last conversation. "Grace," he'd said, his voice weak but urgent, "there's something you need to know. About the money. About Diana." But before he could finish, Diana had swept in with his medication, shooing me away. "Dad needs rest," she'd insisted. "We can talk family business later." He died that night. The next morning, Diana produced a new will, signed and notarized, leaving her everything: the business, the properties, even our mother's jewelry that he promised would be mine. He finally saw the truth. Diana had said smugly, watching me read the document in shock, that I was the only one he could trust. Now, at the reception following the funeral, I watched her work the room like a politician. Diana had always been the sociable one, the daughter who could charm anyone. I was the quiet one, the one who preferred spreadsheets to social events. "Ms. Henderson." A man in a dark suit approached me. "Thomas Bradley, your father's security consultant. Do you have a moment?" I followed him to a quiet corner, away from the clusters of mourners discussing Dad's legacy. "Your father installed a new security system in his home office 3 months ago," Thomas said, keeping his voice low. "Cameras, audio recording, everything." He was concerned about something. My heart skipped. "Did he tell you what?" Thomas shook his head. "But he gave me instructions. If anything happened to him, I was to give you this." He slipped me a small USB drive. "Don't let anyone know you have it." Before I could ask more questions, Diana's voice cut through the room. "Grace, stop hiding and come help me with the guests." I tucked the drive into my purse, my mind racing. Dad had installed secret cameras. Why? And why tell me about them now? That evening, after the last mourners had left, Diana cornered me in Dad's study. The room still smelled like his cologne. His reading glasses still perched on the massive oak desk where he'd built his real estate empire. "I need you out of the house by the end of the week," she said, examining her manicure. "I'm selling it." "Selling it?" I stared at her. Dad loved this house. Mom decorated every room herself before she died. Diana's laugh was cold. "Please, it's outdated and the market's hot. Besides, it's mine now. I can do what I want with it." I looked around the study, remembering all the Sunday afternoons I'd spent here with Dad, learning about property values and investment strategies while Diana was out shopping or at parties. He'd been grooming me to take over the business. Everyone knew that. Until 3 months ago, when everything changed, when Diana suddenly started spending more time with him, bringing him meals, managing his medication. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. "To make him change the will?" Her expression hardened. "I told him the truth about you, about the money you've been stealing from the company accounts. I never stole anything. Tell that to the forensic accountant's report." She pulled a file from Dad's desk. $300,000. Grace. Transferred to offshore accounts over the past year. Dad was heartbroken when he saw the proof. I felt the blood drain from my face. The transfers were real. I'd done them myself, on Dad's instructions. They were for a real estate deal he wanted to keep quiet until it was finalized. A deal that would have doubled the company's holdings. Dad knew about those transfers. I protested. He ordered them. Really? Diana's smile was vicious. That's not what the paperwork shows. Your signatures, your access codes. No documentation of Dad's involvement, just a trusted daughter taking advantage of her position. I gripped the edge of Dad's desk, feeling the smooth wood under my fingers. You really expect people to believe I would steal from my own father? They already do. She waved the forensic report. The board has seen this. The police have a copy. Face it, Grace, you're finished. The only reason you're not in handcuffs is because Dad didn't want a scandal. The USB drive felt heavy in my purse. Whatever was on it, I knew I needed to watch it alone. I'll be out by Friday, I said finally. Diana's smile widened. Perfect. Oh, and Grace, don't bother trying to challenge the will. No judge will side with someone under investigation for embezzlement. I left the study feeling numb. The house I'd grown up in, the business I'd helped build, my very reputation, all gone in the blink of an eye. My apartment felt cold and empty when I finally got home. I'd moved out of Dad's house years ago, wanting to prove I could make it on my own. Now it felt less like independence and more like exile. With shaking hands, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. Multiple video files appeared, each labeled with dates from the past 3 months. I clicked on the first one. The study appeared on my screen, the camera angle showing most of the room. Dad sat at his desk, looking tired but alert. Diana entered, carrying a glass of water and his evening medication. But instead of leaving, she sat down across from him. We need to talk about Grace. Her voice came clearly through the speakers. About what she's been doing with company money. I sat back, my heart pounding, as my sister began to weave her web of lies. On my screen, our father's face showed confusion, then concern, then anger as Diana presented her evidence. This was just the first video. There were dozens more, spanning 3 months of careful manipulation. 3 months that had cost me everything. But Diana had made one crucial mistake. She didn't know about the cameras. I pulled out my phone and dialed Thomas Bradley's number. I need copies of everything, I said when he answered. Every video, every recording. And I need to know exactly when that security system was installed. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The videos became my nightly obsession. Each one revealed another layer of Diana's manipulation, another carefully orchestrated scene designed to turn our father against me. Look at these transactions, Diana's voice played through my laptop speakers. All authorized by Grace, all untraceable. She thinks she's so clever, Daddy, but I found the proof. I watched my father's face crumple as Diana showed him doctored bank statements, forged documents, fake email trails, all proving my supposed embezzlement. Each piece of evidence had been meticulously crafted to paint me as a thief. But Diana had made mistakes. Small ones, but they were there. He knew where to look. I picked up my phone and called the one person who could help me make sense of the financial trail. Michael? It's Grace Henderson. I need your expertise. Michael Chen had been Dad's forensic accountant for years before Diana hired her own person. He taught me everything I knew about following money trails. I saw the report about your alleged embezzlement, he said when we met at his office the next day. Something didn't add up, but by then had been removed from the company accounts. I placed a USB drive on his desk. A copy of Diana's evidence against me. I need you to look at these transactions. Really look at them. For 3 hours, we pored over the documents together. Michael's frown deepened as he noticed discrepancies. Timestamps that didn't match, routing numbers that led nowhere, authorization codes that didn't exist 3 months ago. This is professional work, he said finally. Someone with serious skills created these records, but they made one critical error. What's that? He pointed to a series of numbers on the screen. These authorization codes, they're backdated to make it look like you initiated the transfers last year, but this format wasn't implemented by the bank until 2 months ago. My heart raced. So the documents had to have been created recently. Very recently. He sat back, looking troubled. Grace, this isn't just fraud. This is sophisticated financial manipulation. Your sister had help. That's when I remembered Mark. Diana's supposedly ex-husband who worked in cybersecurity. The pieces started falling into place. I spent the next week gathering evidence. The security footage showed Diana making late-night calls from Dad's study, always when she thought no one was watching. Using Dad's phone records, I traced the calls to Mark's private number. Then came the breakthrough I'd been waiting for. In one video, dated just 2 days before Dad died, Diana was arguing with someone on the phone. "The documents have to be perfect," she hissed. "The board meets tomorrow." "No, listen to me, Mark. Once Dad signs the new will, it won't matter. Grace will be out, and we'll have everything. Just do your job and make the transfers look real." I watched that clip 20 times, each viewing revealing new details. The way Diana kept glancing at Dad's medication on the desk. How she'd increased his dosage that week, claiming the doctor had ordered it. But when I called Dad's doctor, he confirmed no such order had been given. The next morning, I walked into the offices of Henderson Real Estate Development for the first time since Dad's death. Diana had moved into his corner office, of course. Her new nameplate gleamed on the door. "Diana Henderson, CEO." She looked up as I entered, annoyance flashing across her face. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome in this building." "Actually," I said calmly, setting my laptop on her desk, "I am. The board is very interested in what I have to show them." Her confident smile faltered slightly. "The board isn't interested in anything you have to say. You're under investigation for theft, remember?" "Funny you should mention that." I opened my laptop, turning it so she could see the screen. "Want to watch some home movies?" The color drained from her face as she recognized the study, heard her own voice plotting with Mark. "Where did you get those?" "Dad was smarter than you gave him credit for." I started playing another clip, this one showing her tampering with his medication. He knew something was wrong. That's why he installed the cameras. "You're bluffing," but her voice shook. "Those videos could be fake. Like the financial records you and Mark created? The ones with impossible authorization codes?" I leaned forward. "The board has already seen everything. They're meeting right now to discuss it, along with the police." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. A message from the board chairman requesting her immediate presence in the conference room. "You can't prove anything," she whispered, but we both knew it was over. "I already have." I stood up, gathering my things. "By the way, how is Mark?" "Still happily divorced." She lunged for my laptop, but I was faster. Security was already waiting outside her office, the same security team that had watched her on camera systematically destroying my life. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements, board meetings, and legal discussions. Diana was escorted from the building, her access revoked. Mark was arrested at his office, caught trying to delete evidence of their scheme. The forensic accountants found everything. The real transfers Diana had made to offshore accounts, the sophisticated software Mark had used to create fake records, even emails discussing their plan to discredit me and seize control of the company. "Your father suspected something," Thomas Bradley told me later. "He noticed money missing, saw Diana acting strangely. That's why he had me install the cameras. He was gathering evidence. But he died before he could expose them," I finished quietly. The toxicology report came back a week later. Diana had been systematically overdosing Dad's medication, not enough to kill him directly, but enough to cloud his judgment, make him susceptible to her manipulation. The new will was invalidated, signed under duress and medical impairment. Dad's original will was reinstated, the one that left the company to me and provided a modest trust fund for Diana. Not that it mattered now. Diana faced multiple charges: fraud, financial manipulation, elder abuse. Mark turned state's evidence, revealing their entire scheme in exchange for a lighter sentence. I stood in Dad's study, my study now, looking at the hidden camera that had saved everything. The company was intact, my reputation restored. But the cost had been steep. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Board meeting in 10. Ready to take the reins?" I straightened my jacket, squared my shoulders. Dad had trusted me with his legacy, even at the end. He'd made sure the truth would come out. On my way, I texted back. The company would thrive. I'd make sure of it, not just for Dad's memory, but for all the employees who trusted us with their livelihoods. Diana had wanted power at any cost. She'd forgotten the most important lesson Dad ever taught us. True legacy isn't about money or control. It's about integrity. As I left the study, I paused by his photo on the wall. "I got your message, Dad," I whispered, loud and clear. The security camera blinked silently above, It's red light a reminder that sometimes the truth has a way of emerging, even when everything seems lost. Deanna would have years in prison to think about her choices. Mark would never work in finance again. And me? I had a company to run, employees to protect, and a father's legacy to honor. Some say revenge is best served cold. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. For Dad, for the company, for the truth. The board was waiting. Time to show them exactly why Dad had chosen me all along. Ms. Henderson. Linda, Dad's former secretary, my secretary now, appeared at the door. Everyone's ready for you. I took one last look around the study, at the camera that had revealed everything. Let's get to work. After all, that's what Dad would have wanted.
The words "license suspended" stared back at me from the official letter, each character feeling like a personal betrayal. After 15 years of dedicated service at Boston Memorial Hospital, my career had been reduced to a 2-page notice citing professional misconduct and questionable medical decisions. I placed the letter carefully on my desk, next to the framed photo of my husband Mark and me at my medical school graduation. The irony of that happy moment wasn't lost on me. His mother had been there too, beaming proudly at her son's new doctor wife. If only I'd known then what that approval would cost. My name is Dr. Emily Chen, and at 38, I'd built a reputation as one of Boston Memorial's most respected emergency medicine physicians. That was before Victoria Sterling, my mother-in-law and newly appointed hospital board member, decided I wasn't worthy of her son after all. Dr. Chen, Jenny, one of our veteran nurses, poked her head into my office. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She'd obviously been crying. The staff, we've all heard. This isn't right. I managed a small smile. No, it's not. But it's not over either. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Dr. Sterling was bragging about it in the boardroom, said she'd finally dealt with the problem. We all know what she's doing. Emily, this isn't about patient care. No, it wasn't. This was about control. About a woman who couldn't bear the thought of her precious son being married to someone who wouldn't bow to her influence. The fact that Mark and I had been happily married for 10 years. That I'd built my own successful career without her help. It ate at her. Jenny, I said carefully, those patient files Victoria claims show my misconduct. Did she access them herself? Jenny's eyes widened slightly. Yes, she's been coming in late at night, going through records. We thought it was just normal board oversight. But, I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. And did she use her own login credentials? No, Jenny replied, understanding dawning on her face. She's been using Dr. Morrison's. He's been on sabbatical, but his access is still active. Exactly what I'd suspected. Victoria's arrogance had made her sloppy. She'd left a trail, thinking no one would dare question her actions. That evening, I sat in our home office, surrounded by copies of patient records I'd carefully documented over the years. Mark found me there, still reviewing files hours after dinner. He said softly, Mom called. She wants us to come over tomorrow. Says she has something important to discuss. I looked up at my husband, this kind, brilliant man who'd somehow emerged decent despite Victoria's toxic influence. I assume she wants to celebrate destroying my career? He sat heavily in the chair across from me. I don't understand why she's doing this. You're an amazing doctor. The patients love you. The staff respects you. But I don't defer to her. I finished. I don't ask her permission for career decisions or consult her about our personal lives. That's what this is really about. Mark ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I'll talk to her. Make her understand. No, I cut him off gently. Don't you see? That's exactly what she wants, to force you to choose between us. To prove she still controls you. He was quiet for a moment, studying the papers spread across my desk. These patient records. What are you looking for? I hesitated. What I'd discovered in my review of the files was bigger than just Victoria's vendetta against me. Much bigger. Your mother didn't just access patient records illegally, I said carefully. She modified them, changed treatment dates, altered medication records. But she made a mistake. She didn't know about the backup systems I put in place years ago. Mark's face paled. She tampered with medical records? To make it look like I'd made dangerous decisions. Yes, but in doing so, she revealed something else, something that's been happening at Boston Memorial for years. I pulled out a specific set of files, cases that had always bothered me, but that I'd never been able to connect until now. Victoria's tampering had inadvertently exposed a pattern that had been hidden in plain sight. These patients, I explained, spreading out the files, all came through the ER with similar symptoms. All were transferred to the private wing under the care of specific doctors, and all had their original diagnoses and treatment plans mysteriously altered. Mark leaned forward, his medical training kicking in as he scanned the records. These changes, they're all pushing expensive treatments, unnecessary procedures. Exactly. Your mother was so focused on discrediting me that she didn't realize she was exposing a massive insurance fraud scheme, one that's been operating at Boston Memorial for at least a decade. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about my career anymore, this was about systematic fraud that had potentially affected hundreds of patients. How long have you known? Mark asked quietly. I've suspected something was wrong for years. Certain cases didn't add up, treatments seemed excessive, but I could never prove anything. The records always seemed to support the decisions, even when my notes said otherwise. I pulled out another file, this one containing records of my own documentation over the years. I started keeping separate records after the first few suspicious cases, private notes, copies of original diagnoses, even recordings of some patient consultations. I knew something wasn't right, but I never imagined that my mother would accidentally expose it all. Mark finished. He was silent for a moment. Then, what are you going to do? I smiled for the first time that day. First, we're going to your mother's house tomorrow. I want to hear exactly what she has to say about my suspension. And then I'm going to meet with someone who's very interested in insurance fraud at major hospitals. Someone Victoria would never suspect, I know. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Sarah Martinez at the State Medical Board, not about my suspension, but about a pattern of suspicious billing practices I'd documented. The second call was to FBI Special Agent David Chin, no relation, who specialized in healthcare fraud investigations. He'd been looking into several hospitals in the Boston area, but hadn't been able to crack the careful documentation that covered up the scheme. This is exactly what we needed, he said after I explained what I'd found. But are you sure you want to do this? Your mother-in-law tried to destroy my career to maintain her control over her son, I finished. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. That afternoon, Mark and I drove to Victoria's massive colonial home in the suburbs. She opened the door wearing her usual perfect smile, every gray hair expertly colored and styled. Mark, darling, she cooed, embracing him before turning her cold eyes to me. Emily. I suppose you've heard the news about my suspension? I kept my voice steady. Yes, I have. Well, come in, she said, ushering us into her formal living room. We need to discuss your future. Or rather, lack thereof. I sat quietly as she launched into her carefully prepared speech about how this was really for the best, how I could find something more suitable to do with my time, how Mark deserved a wife who would prioritize family over career. After all, she concluded with a smirk, you'll never practice medicine again. I've made sure of that. Perhaps now Mark will finally see reason and end this unfortunate marriage. I felt Mark tense beside me, but I squeezed his hand gently. Stay calm. Let her talk. Actually, Victoria, I said pleasantly, I should thank you. She blinked, clearly thrown by my response. Thank me? Yes. Your thorough review of my patient files has been incredibly helpful. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with some people who are very interested in what you found. What are you talking about? Her perfect composure cracked slightly. The FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division, for one. The State Medical Board, for another. They're particularly interested in the pattern of altered records and inflated billing you accidentally exposed while trying to discredit me. The color drained from Victoria's face. You're lying. You can't prove anything, can't I? I pulled out my phone, showing her the access logs Jenny had provided. Every time you used Dr. Morrison's credentials to access and modify records, it was logged. Every change you made was tracked. And in trying to make me look bad, you revealed something much bigger, didn't you? Victoria's hands trembled as she reached for her wine glass. You have no idea what you're talking about. The board will never believe you over me. The board won't have a choice, I replied calmly. Not with the evidence I've collected, not just about your tampering, but about the entire scheme. Did you really think I wouldn't keep my own records? That I wouldn't document every suspicious case that came through my ER? Mark sat forward, his voice tight with anger. How long, Mom? How long have you known about the fraud? Victoria's mask finally cracked completely. You don't understand. The hospital needed the revenue. Insurance companies keep cutting reimbursements, costs keep rising. We did what we had to do. By ordering unnecessary procedures? By altering patient records to justify excessive treatments? I shook my head. How many people were harmed by this, Victoria? How many patients underwent procedures they didn't need? No one was harmed, she snapped. They got excellent care. Care they didn't need, Mark interrupted. Care that could have caused complications, that put them at risk unnecessarily. Also, the hospital could bill their insurance for more money. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. The FBI will be executing search warrants tomorrow morning. They'll seize the hospital's records, both sets of them. The real ones and the altered ones. Victoria's face went from pale to ashen. You can't do this. You'll destroy everything. No, I corrected her. You did that when you decided to abuse your power. When you thought you could use your position to control everyone around you. As we walked to the door, she called out desperately, Mark, please. You can't let her do this. I'm your mother. Mark turned back to her, his expression sad but determined. And Emily is my wife. The woman I love. The doctor who actually cares about her patients. You did this to yourself, Mom. The next morning, I watched from across the street as FBI agents entered Boston Memorial. Victoria arrived shortly after, only to be met by agents at the door. Her perfect composure crumbled as they escorted her inside. Jenny called me an hour later. They're going through everything, she reported. Dr. Morrison just confessed to giving Dr. Sterling his login credentials. Said she threatened his position if he didn't cooperate. How many others? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. At least 6 doctors involved in the scheme directly. More who knew but stayed quiet. The private wing is shut down completely while they investigate. Over the next few weeks, the full scope of the fraud became clear. For over a decade, certain doctors had been ordering unnecessary tests and procedures, altering records to justify the treatments, and billing insurance companies for millions in fraudulent claims. Victoria, as board member and chief of surgery, had been one of the architects of the scheme. Her attempt to discredit me had inadvertently exposed the careful documentation system they'd created to cover their tracks. The state medical board not only reinstated my license, but commended my documentation of suspicious cases. The FBI used my records as a roadmap to unravel the entire conspiracy. 3 months after that evening at Victoria's house, I sat in a federal courthouse, preparing to testify about what I'd discovered. Mark squeezed my hand as Victoria was led in wearing handcuffs, a far cry from her usual elegant appearance. She looked older, defeated. When her eyes met mine, I saw something I'd never seen before, respect, tinged with fear. The trial lasted 2 weeks. In the end, Victoria and 5 other doctors were convicted of healthcare fraud and conspiracy. The hospital's reputation was severely damaged, but new leadership was brought in to rebuild properly. I was offered the position of Chief of Emergency Medicine at Boston Memorial's reorganized administration. I accepted on one condition, that we implement rigorous oversight and documentation systems to prevent future fraud. Mark supported me completely, though the situation with his mother strained him. We visited her once in prison, where she finally offered something close to an apology. I thought I was protecting the hospital, she said. But really, I was just drunk on power. The ability to control things, to make decisions without anyone questioning me. That's why you hated me so much, I realized. Because I questioned things. Because I kept records and documented inconsistencies. She nodded slowly. You were a threat to the system we'd built. And to my control over Mark. I couldn't allow either. A year after Victoria's conviction, I stood in Boston Memorial's ER, watching my team work. The hospital was different now, more transparent, more focused on patient care than profits. My detailed documentation system had become the standard across all departments. Mark joined me during his break from surgery, wrapping an arm around my waist. Mom's parole hearing is next month, he said quietly. I nodded. We'd discussed this. What do you think she'll do if they release her? Move to Florida with my aunt, he replied. She knows she can't stay in Boston. Her reputation here is destroyed, along with her power. I added, that's what will hurt her the most. He smiled slightly. You know what's ironic? If she hadn't tried to destroy your career, hadn't gotten sloppy trying to discredit you, the fraud might never have been discovered. Sometimes people's worst impulses lead to their downfall, I said. She was so focused on controlling us that she lost control of everything. Later that evening, as I reviewed patient files, properly documented and transparently stored, I found myself thinking about power and control. Victoria had spent years building her empire of influence, never realizing that true power comes from using your position to help others, not control them. The photo from my medical school graduation still sat on my desk, but now it was joined by a news clipping about the fraud conviction and the doctor whose careful documentation had exposed it all. Victoria had tried to end my medical career to maintain her control. Instead, she'd helped me remake the hospital into something better, something honest. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about building something stronger from the ruins of their schemes.
The laboratory was quiet except for the gentle hum of equipment and my fingers tapping on the keyboard. It was nearly midnight, but I couldn't stop, not when I was this close. My name is Dr. Elena Martinez, and after 3 years of research, countless failed attempts, and endless nights like this one, I was finally seeing results that could change everything. Still here? I jumped at the sound of my husband's voice. David stood in the doorway of our home lab, wearing his usual expensive suit, perfectly styled hair barely touched by the long day at the hospital where he worked as a surgeon. He looked more like he was headed to a photo shoot than coming home from a 12-hour shift. Just finishing up, I said, quickly saving my latest data. The results from today's trials are promising. I think we're close to a breakthrough with the... Elena, he cut me off, his tone carrying that familiar edge of condescension. It's late. Come to bed. Whatever you're working on can wait. I bit back my frustration. David had never understood my research, never saw value in the countless hours I spent developing new treatment protocols for autoimmune diseases. To him, real medicine happened in operating rooms, not research labs. The fact that I'd chosen to focus on research instead of clinical practice was just another way I'd disappointed him. 5 more minutes, I promised, turning back to my computer. I just need to document these findings. He sighed dramatically but left me alone. I waited until his footsteps faded before opening my email to send the day's results to myself. A habit I developed after one too many computer crashes had taught me the importance of backups. That's when I saw it. An email from the National Institute of Health, marked urgent. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dear Dr. Martinez, we are pleased to inform you that your research proposal on novel treatments for autoimmune disorders has been selected for full funding consideration. The preliminary results you've shared are extremely promising. I had to read it 3 times before the words sank in. This was it, the validation I'd been working towards for years. The NIH grant would mean everything: proper funding, a real lab, the chance to expand my research beyond our converted garage. I wanted to run upstairs and tell David immediately, but something held me back. The last time I'd shared exciting news about my research, he'd dismissed it with a wave of his hand. That's nice, dear, he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. But let's talk about real medicine. You should see the surgery I performed today. Instead, I forwarded the email to my personal account and headed upstairs. I'd tell him tomorrow, I decided. Maybe over breakfast, when he was in a better mood. But the next morning, the email was gone. Not just from my work computer, but from my personal email too. Deleted from both accounts with no trace in the trash folders. I frowned at my screen, puzzled. Had I imagined it? The lack of sleep must be getting to me. I made a mental note to check my NIH application status later and headed to the kitchen. David was already there, looking fresh and polished as always. He barely glanced up from his phone as I entered. I'm thinking of presenting at the medical conference next month, he said casually. I've been working on something interesting. Oh? I poured myself a cup of coffee, trying to shake off my unease about the missing email. What kind of presentation? Just some research findings, he replied vaguely. Nothing you'd understand. Real medical breakthroughs, not just theoretical stuff. I felt my jaw tighten but forced a smile. That's great, honey. I'm sure it'll be amazing. He finally looked up, his expression softening slightly. You know, Elena, if you're bored playing around in that garage, I could probably get you a position at the hospital. Something simple, administrative maybe. At least then you'd be doing something useful. The words hit like a slap. I'm not playing, I said quietly. My research is important. Sure it is, he said, his tone making it clear he thought the opposite. He stood up, straightening his tie. "I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up." As soon as he left, I went back to my computer, determined to track down that NIH email. But the more I searched, the more things I noticed were wrong. Files moved or missing. Data sets altered. Small changes that wouldn't be obvious unless you knew what to look for. My heart started racing as I dug deeper. Someone had been in my computer, systematically copying my research and deleting the originals. And there was only one other person who had access to my lab. With shaking hands, I opened a browser and searched for the upcoming medical conference David had mentioned. There it was, listed among the keynote presentations. Breakthrough Treatments in Autoimmune Disorders, presented by Dr. David Martinez. The room spun as I stared at the screen. My research, my life's work. He was going to present it as his own. I sat there for a long time, letting the betrayal wash over me. Years of dismissive comments, subtle put-downs, and barely concealed contempt suddenly shifted into sharp focus. He hadn't just been belittling my work. He'd been studying it, waiting for the right moment to steal it. Finally, I stood up, my decision made. I wouldn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I walked calmly to our bedroom and opened his laptop, the one he thought I didn't know the password to. Sure enough, there were all my files, carefully organized and relabeled with his name. I smiled as I started typing. David had no idea what he just set in motion. You see, my husband thought he knew everything about me, but there was a lot he didn't know, like the fact that before I met him, I'd worked in digital forensics, or that I maintained backdoor access to every computer in our house, just in case, or that I had copies of all my research stored securely off-site, with timestamps and digital signatures proving exactly when each discovery was made. But most importantly, he didn't know that I'd been waiting for something like this. A chance to finally show him exactly who he'd been underestimating all these years. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a long time. "Sarah, it's Elena. Remember that favor you owe me? I need your help with something." The next few weeks passed in a blur of careful preparation. On the surface, nothing changed. I went about my routine as usual, working in my lab, making small talk with David when our paths crossed. If he noticed anything different about my behavior, he didn't show it. But beneath the calm exterior, I was building my case. Sarah, now a prominent intellectual property lawyer, helped me document everything. Every stolen file, every deleted email, every trace of David's systematic theft of my research. "This is incredible," Sarah said one afternoon as we met in a cafe far from my usual haunts. "He really thought he could just take all this and no one would notice?" I stirred my coffee, watching the liquid swirl. He thought I was useless, remember? Just his silly wife playing scientist in the garage. Sarah's expression hardened. Well, he's about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The medical conference was approaching fast. David spent more and more time at the hospital, preparing his presentation. Each time he mentioned it, I had to fight back a smile. Then, 3 days before the conference, I received another email from the NIH. This time, I made sure David couldn't delete it. "Dear Dr. Martinez, we are writing to follow up on our previous communication regarding your research funding. We are deeply concerned about the apparent duplication of your work being presented at the upcoming medical conference." I forwarded the email to Sarah, then sat back and waited. The next morning, David's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. I pretended to sleep as he answered it, listening to his voice grow increasingly panicked. "What do you mean, intellectual property dispute?" "No, you don't understand. This is my research. What previous submission?" I kept my eyes closed as he got dressed in a rush and hurried out the door. Only then did I allow myself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. The day of the medical conference arrived with a buzz of anticipation. I watched from our bedroom window as David left early that morning, his presentation materials clutched tightly under his arm. He hadn't slept well. I'd heard him pacing most of the night, making frantic phone calls in hushed tones. He still had no idea I was coming to the conference. I waited until his car disappeared around the corner before getting ready. The red dress I'd chosen was a far cry from my usual lab attire, fitted, professional, and powerful. As I applied the finishing touches to my makeup, I thought about how long I'd been planning this moment. "Everything's in place," Sarah texted. "Are you ready?" I took one last look in the mirror, on my way. The conference center was packed when I arrived, doctors and researchers from around the country filling the massive auditorium. David's presentation was scheduled as the keynote, a spot he'd no doubt pulled strings to secure. I slipped into a seat near the back, my heart pounding but my expression calm. The conference director took the stage, shuffling some papers nervously. "Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a slight change to our program." I watched David's face as he sat in the front row, his back rigid with tension. He knew something was wrong, but he had no idea what was coming. Instead of our scheduled keynote, the director continued, "We have a special presentation from the original researcher behind today's breakthrough findings. Please welcome Dr. Elena Martinez." The room erupted in murmurs as I stood up. David whirled around, his face draining of color as he saw me walking toward the stage. For the first time in our marriage, he looked genuinely afraid. I took my place at the podium, setting down the folder containing copies of every piece of evidence Sarah and I had gathered. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, my voice steady and clear. "Today, I'd like to talk about not just medical breakthroughs, but about integrity in research. What happened next would make headlines in the medical community for months to come." I presented my research, my real research backed by years of documented work. I showed the progression of my discoveries, the careful trials, the meticulous documentation. And then, without ever mentioning David by name, I demonstrated how my work had been stolen, altered, and nearly presented as someone else's. The evidence was irrefutable. With each slide, each data point, each time-stamped file, I watched David sink lower in his seat. The whispers in the audience grew louder. Several people were openly staring at him now, recognition dawning on their faces. Furthermore, I continued, maintaining my professional tone. "I'm pleased to announce that this research has already been submitted to and recognized by the National Institutes of Health. The full study, under my name, will be published next month in the Journal of Medical Innovation." I saw David stand abruptly and head for the exit, but security, arranged by Sarah, was already there. He wasn't going anywhere until the Board of Ethics had their say. After my presentation, the conference erupted in chaos. Reporters who'd come to cover a simple medical breakthrough found themselves with a much bigger story. Colleagues crowded around me, some offering support, others asking questions about my research itself. Through it all, I maintained my composure, answering questions with the same quiet confidence that David had dismissed for so long. Later that evening, as security escorted David out of the building, he caught my eye. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You could have just confronted me privately. Why do this?" I stepped closer, keeping my voice low so only he could hear. "Because you needed to learn something, David. You thought I was useless, remember? Just your silly wife playing scientist. Well, now everyone knows exactly who I am, and exactly who you are." The aftermath was swift and severe. David's medical license was suspended pending investigation. The hospital launched an internal review of all his past work. Our marriage, unsurprisingly, ended in divorce. But for me, it was just the beginning. The NIA funding came through, allowing me to establish a proper research facility. My work gained recognition in the medical community, leading to collaborations with other researchers who actually respected my contributions. 1 year later, I stood in my new lab, not a converted garage, but a state-of-the-art facility with a team of dedicated researchers. My phone buzzed with a news alert. David had been formally stripped of his medical license, his reputation in tatters. I set the phone down without reading further. His story didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the work we were doing here, the lives we could change with our research. A young intern approached my desk, looking nervous. "Dr. Martinez, I wanted to ask you about your latest protocol." I smiled, remembering how it felt to be dismissed and belittled. "Pull up a chair," I said warmly. "Let's talk it through." As we discussed the research, I thought about how far I'd come. David had tried to steal my life's work, thinking I would stay quiet, stay in my place. Instead, he'd given me the push I needed to reclaim not just my research, but my power. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so far above someone that they have to live with the knowledge of what they lost. David hadn't just lost his career and reputation. He'd lost the chance to be part of something truly groundbreaking, all because he couldn't see past his own arrogance. The lab hummed with activity around me, researchers collaborating, ideas flowing freely. This was what I'd always dreamed of, not just making breakthroughs, but creating an environment where everyone's contributions were valued. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah. Saw the news. Drinks to celebrate. I texted back quickly, can't tonight. We're on the verge of something big here. And we were. The preliminary results from our latest trials were showing promise in treating previously resistant autoimmune conditions. The work I'd started alone in my garage was now helping people, saving lives. That evening, as I walked through the lab preparing to head home, I passed the wall where we displayed our team's achievements. In the center was the framed cover of the Journal of Medical Innovation featuring my original research, the same research David had tried to claim as his own. Next to it hung a new addition. A letter from a patient whose life had been transformed by our treatment protocol. Thank you for not giving up, it read. Thank you for believing in your work. I touched the frame gently, remembering all the times David had called my work useless, all the times he tried to make me doubt myself. If he hadn't tried to steal my research, would I have found the strength to step out of his shadow? Would I have built all this? Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our greatest triumphs. David had tried to steal my work, but in doing so, he'd given me something far more valuable. The push I needed to become who I was always meant to be. As I turned off the lights and headed out, my phone lit up with another message. This one was from a name I hadn't seen in months. David. I'm sorry, it read. I know it's too late, but I need you to know, you were never useless. I was just too blind to see how extraordinary you are. I deleted the message without responding. He was right about one thing. It was too late. I didn't need his recognition anymore. I had something far better. The knowledge that I had built something meaningful, something that would outlast his betrayal and help countless people. The night air was cool as I walked to my car. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new opportunities to prove that success is the best revenge. But tonight, I could rest easy knowing that I had turned his betrayal into my triumph. In the end, David's attempt to steal my work hadn't destroyed me. It had set me free, and that was worth more than any revenge I could have planned. The banquet hall was exactly as I'd imagined it would be, extravagant, over the top, and dripping with Michael's need to show off his wealth. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead while waiters circulated with champagne flutes, all paid for with money that should have gone to our daughter's college fund. Ma'am? A young server stopped beside me. I'm sorry, but this is a private event. I know, I said, clutching the silver-wrapped gift box closer to my chest. I'm Lily's mother. My name is Rebecca Turner, and for the past 8 years, I've been playing a role my ex-husband wrote for me, the heartless mother who abandoned her family. But tonight, at my daughter's sweet 16, everything was about to change. Mom? I turned to see Lily standing there in her princess ball gown, looking so grown up it made my heart ache. Her eyes, still like mine, were wide with confusion and something else. Anger? Fear? Both? You're not supposed to be here, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Dad said. I'm sure he did. I held out the gift box. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Before she could respond, Michael materialized beside her, his arm going protectively around her shoulders. He looked exactly as I remembered. Expensive suit, perfect hair, and that smile that had once charmed me and now made my skin crawl. Rebecca, he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. This is a private party. I thought I made it clear you weren't welcome. I met his gaze steadily. Our daughter turned 16 once, Michael. I wouldn't miss it. Our daughter. He laughed, but I caught the flash of worry in his eyes. You gave up that right when you walked out on us. Right, princess? Lily nodded, though I noticed she was still staring at the gift box in my hands. She'd always been curious, even as a little girl. Some things never change. At least let me give her my present, I said, holding out the box. Then I'll go. Michael started to object, but Lily reached for the gift before he could stop her. Always his biggest fear, losing control of the narrative he'd so carefully constructed. Fine, he snapped. Open it quickly so your mother can leave. We have guests waiting. Lily carefully unwrapped the silver paper, lifting the lid of the box. Inside was a single USB drive and a letter, both nestled in white tissue paper. She looked up, confused. What is this? The truth, I said simply. About why I really left 8 years ago. About where the money from the sale of our house went. About everything. Michael's face went pale. Lily, give me that. But our daughter had already pulled out the letter, her eyes scanning the first few lines. I watched as her expression changed from confusion to shock. You see, Michael hadn't counted on one thing when he forced me out of our daughter's life. That I would spend every day of those 8 years gathering evidence, building a case, and waiting for the perfect moment to reveal everything. And what better moment than the party he'd thrown to show off his perfect life? The life he'd built using stolen money. Money that should have been Lily's inheritance from my parents. Dad? Lily's voice was small as she looked up from the letter. What's she talking about? What trust fund? Michael grabbed for the letter, but Lily pulled it away. It's nothing, Princess. Your mother's just trying to cause trouble, like always. Really? I pulled out my phone, pulling up a banking app. Should we call the trustee right now? I'm sure he'd love to explain how you forged my signature to drain our daughter's college fund. The color drained from Michael's face. You're lying. The same way I lied about the embezzlement charges, the ones you buried by threatening to take full custody if I went to the police. I kept my voice calm, even as years of suppressed anger threatened to boil over. Or maybe we should talk about Rachel. Who's Rachel? Lily asked, still clutching my letter. Your father's girlfriend. The one he was seeing while I was taking care of my dying mother. The same one who's now his business partner, living in the house my parents left me. Michael grabbed my arm, hard enough to leave bruises. Outside. Now. I smiled, seeing the panic in his eyes. No, I don't think so. I'm done letting you control the narrative, Michael. Done letting you poison our daughter against me with your lies. Around us, party guests were starting to notice the tension. Michael's perfect facade was cracking, and he knew it. Whatever you think you know, he hissed, you can't prove it. Actually, I can. I nodded toward the USB drive still in the box. 8 years of bank statements, emails, phone records, even a few interesting conversations I recorded before you kicked me out. The police have copies, so does the IRS. Lily was reading through the letter faster now, her hands shaking. Dad, is this true? Did you really? Don't listen to her, Michael snapped. Your mother's mentally unstable. That's why she left us, remember? She couldn't handle finding out you'd stolen my inheritance. I cut in. Or couldn't handle the restraining order you threatened me with if I tried to contact my own daughter. The music had stopped. Guests were openly staring now, phones discreetly recording. Michael's carefully orchestrated party was imploding, and with it the lies he built his life upon. Security, he called out, desperation creeping into his voice. Remove her. They can't, I said calmly. This venue is owned by my cousin Thomas. Remember him? The one you tried to blackmail last year? He's very interested in seeing how this plays out. Lily had finished the letter, tears streaming down her face. All this time, you didn't abandon us. Dad made you leave. I reached for her hand, and for the first time in 8 years, she didn't pull away. I never abandoned you, sweetheart. I've been fighting to get back to you since the day your father threatened to destroy my life if I didn't disappear. She's lying, Michael insisted, but his voice had lost its conviction. Lily, Princess, you know me. You know I would never. Never what? I pulled out another envelope from my purse. Never forge my signature to steal her trust fund. Never use my parents' death to seize control of their assets. Never threaten to take full custody if I expose your affair with Rachel. I handed the envelope to Lily. These are copies of everything. Bank records, legal documents, photos, all proving what your father's been hiding. The originals are with my lawyer, who's probably meeting with the DA right now. Michael lunged for the envelope, but Lily stepped back, clutching it to her chest. The look she gave him, one of betrayal and dawning comprehension, was exactly what he'd always feared. Princess, he started, reaching for her, but she backed away further. Don't call me that, she whispered. Not right now. I need to think. I watched as my daughter, still in her perfect party dress, turned and ran from the ballroom. Michael moved to follow her, but 2 security guards, my cousin's employees, stepped in his path. This isn't over, he snarled at me. I smiled, feeling 8 years of fear and anger finally begin to lift. You're right, it's just beginning. The days following Lily's sweet 16 party unfolded exactly as I'd planned. While Michael scrambled to contain the damage, desperately calling in favors and threatening lawsuits, I watched as 8 years of careful preparation finally paid off. The first domino fell Monday morning when the DA's office announced their investigation into Michael's financial dealings. By afternoon, the IRS had frozen his accounts. But it was the call from Rachel, his girlfriend turned business partner, that really started his downfall. "You ruined everything." His voice echoed through my cousin Thomas's office, where I sat reviewing documents with my lawyer. Michael had been calling nonstop since the party. "Rachel's gone. She took everything from the safe and disappeared." I smiled, thinking about the anonymous tip Rachel had received about Michael's other girlfriend, the one he'd been seeing behind her back. How unfortunate. I suppose she found the offshore account records you've been hiding from her? His sharp intake of breath told me everything. "How did you know about those?" "The same way I know about the shell companies, the forged documents, and the real reason Judge Harrison suddenly ruled in your favor during our custody battle." I paused, letting that sink in. Amazing what people will tell you when they discover they've been deceived. The truth was, Rachel hadn't just disappeared. She'd gone straight to the FBI with everything she found in Michael's safe. Turns out, she didn't appreciate discovering that her soulmate had been playing her just like he played me. Lily was staying with my sister Jane, trying to process everything she'd learned. The letter I'd given her contained not just evidence of Michael's crimes, but years of birthday cards, letters, and photos he'd intercepted, proof that I'd never stopped trying to reach her. "She won't even talk to me," Michael said, his voice cracking. "My own daughter." "Our daughter," I corrected him. "And can you blame her? You stole her trust fund, lied about her mother abandoning her, and used her grandfather's death to seize control of assets that should have been hers. I did everything for her," he shouted, "to give her the life she deserved." "No, Michael, you did it for yourself, just like always." I hung up, turning to my lawyer Marcus. "How long until the arrest warrant comes through?" He checked his phone. "DA's office says tomorrow morning. They want to coordinate with the FBI since some of the charges cross state lines." I nodded, thinking about the meticulous trail of evidence I'd gathered over the years. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every threatening message, all carefully documented and preserved. The next morning, I drove to Jane's house. Lily was in the garden, looking smaller somehow without her party dress and perfect makeup. "Mom?" She looked up as I approached. "Is it true about Dad? About the arrest?" I sat beside her on the garden bench. "Yes. The police are picking him up this morning." She was quiet for a long moment, plucking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "All those years, I thought you didn't want me. Dad said you had mental problems, that you couldn't handle being a mother." "I know, sweetheart." I fought back tears. "And I'm so sorry I couldn't find a way to tell you the truth sooner. But your father's threats weren't empty. He had judges and lawyers in his pocket. If I tried to fight him then, he would have made sure you never saw me again," she finished. "Like he did anyway." "But I never stopped fighting to get back to you," I said, pulling out a worn notebook. "I kept a journal of everything. Your birthdays, school events, achievements I read about in the local paper. I wanted you to know that even though I couldn't be there, I was watching, waiting." Lily took the journal with trembling hands. "The USB drive. I watched some of the videos last night. The ones of Dad threatening you, of him with Rachel in our old house. I'm sorry you had to see that." "Don't be." Her voice hardened. "I needed to see who he really is." Just then, my phone buzzed with a news alert. "Prominent businessman Michael Turner arrested on multiple fraud charges." Lily read the headline over my shoulder. "What happens now?" "Now," I took her hand. "Now we start over. Together." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and media coverage. Michael's arrest made headlines, especially when Rachel testified about his financial schemes. The evidence was overwhelming. Decades of fraud, manipulation, and corruption laid bare for everyone to see. But the real story wasn't about Michael's crimes. It was about the relationship I was finally able to rebuild with my daughter. "I found these," Lily said one evening, bringing over a box of old photos. "They were hidden in Dad's study, pictures of you and me when I was little. We spent hours going through them, me filling in the memories Michael had tried to erase." Her first steps, her favorite bedtime stories, the way she used to insist on wearing her Halloween costume to the grocery store. "You used to sing to me," she said suddenly, "when I couldn't sleep." I remember now. The tears I'd been holding back for 8 years finally fell. Michael's trial was swift and decisive. The evidence I gathered, combined with Rachel's testimony and the paper trail of financial fraud, left no room for doubt. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. But the real justice came in the form of restitution. The court ordered all stolen assets returned, including the trust fund he drained and the house he'd taken through fraud. "It's strange," Lily said as we walked through our old home, now legally returned to us. "Everything looks the same, but feels completely different." I understood what she meant. The house held so many memories, both good and bad. But now we have the chance to make new ones, on our own terms. The media eventually lost interest in the story, moving on to newer scandals. But in our community, the whispers continued. The same people who had believed Michael's lies about me, who had shunned me as the unstable mother who abandoned her child, now had to face the truth. "Mrs. Peterson apologized today," Lily told me over dinner. "She said she should have known better than to believe Dad's stories about you." I thought about all the times Margaret Peterson had crossed the street to avoid me, how she warned other parents not to let their children play with Lily if I was around. "People believe what they want to believe," I said, "especially when the truth is uncomfortable." 6 months after Michael's arrest, Lily and I sat in the garden of our reclaimed home, planning her delayed college applications. The trust fund he'd stolen had been restored, with interest, ensuring her education was secure. "Mom," she looked up from her essay draft. "How did you do it? Keep fighting all those years without giving up." I thought about the long nights documenting evidence, the quiet tears as I missed another birthday, another Christmas, another milestone in my daughter's life. "Because I knew someday you'd learn the truth," I said simply. "And I wanted to make sure that when that day came, you'd understand that not fighting for you was never an option." She hugged me then, something that was becoming wonderfully common. "I'm sorry I believed him for so long." "Don't be. You were a child, and he was your father. He took advantage of that trust. The important thing is that we're here now." Later that evening, as I sat in my study going through old papers, I found the first piece of evidence I'd ever gathered against Michael. A bank statement showing the initial transfer from Lily's trust fund. I remembered the moment I discovered it, the sick feeling as I realized what he'd done. That single document had started everything. My careful documentation, my quiet investigation, my patient wait for the perfect moment to expose his lies. Michael had thought he'd won, that he'd successfully written me out of our daughter's life. Instead, he'd underestimated the one thing stronger than his greed and manipulation: a mother's love for her child. Now, as I listened to Lily playing piano in the living room, something she'd recently started again after years of Michael discouraging it, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. We had years of healing to do, trust to rebuild, memories to reclaim. But we would do it together, free from Michael's lies and manipulation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's life. It's about reclaiming your own. The journal I kept during those 8 years sat on my desk, its pages filled with letters to Lily that I'd never been able to send. But now finally, I could close it. We didn't need letters anymore. We had something better. We had each other. And that, more than any revenge or justice, was what I'd been fighting for all along. The snow fell softly outside the lawyer's office as I watched my husband James practically bounce in his seat. His expensive suit couldn't hide his nervous energy as Mr. Patterson, the family lawyer, sorted through the stack of documents before us. "As you know," Mr. Patterson began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "your grandmother's will has very specific requirements for accessing the inheritance." I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, feeling like an outsider in this conversation about old money and family legacies. "My name is Rachel Waters, and after 5 years of marriage to James Montgomery Aita, I still wasn't used to the weight of his family name or the expectations that came with it." Yes, James waved his hand impatiently. "I have to be married, which I am." He grabbed my hand, squeezing it too tightly. "Rachel and I have been together for 5 years. That satisfies the marriage requirement, right?" Mr. Patterson's expression remained neutral as he pulled out a particular document. The will states that to access the inheritance of $10 million, you must be in a stable, committed marriage. Your grandmother was very particular about this point. I thought about James's grandmother, Eleanor Montgomery, who had passed away 3 months ago. She had been different from the rest of the Montgomery clan, warmer, more genuine. While the rest of the family barely tolerated my middle-class background, Eleanor had welcomed me with open arms. "Well then, let's get on with it," James said, reaching for a pen. "Where do we sign?" Mr. Patterson held up a hand. "There's more. The will requires annual reviews of the marriage's stability for the first 5 years. Any dissolution of the marriage during this period would result in significant consequences." I felt James's hand tighten around mine again. "What kind of consequences?" "In the event of a divorce," Mr. Patterson said, his eyes flicking briefly to me, "the entire inheritance would transfer to the spouse." The room went silent. I could feel James's palm growing sweaty against mine. "That's ridiculous," he finally sputtered. "Grandmother can't have mate." "Your grandmother was very clear," Mr. Patterson interrupted. "She believed that money should support lasting partnerships, not destroy them." He paused, shuffling some papers. "She also left a letter for Rachel." My head snapped up. "For me?" James released my hand as Mr. Patterson pulled out an envelope, cream-colored and sealed with the Montgomery family crest. "To be opened in private," the lawyer added as he handed it to me. I slipped the letter into my purse, very aware of James's eyes following my movement. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of signatures and legal jargon. James was practically vibrating with excitement by the time we left, already making plans for the money. "We'll need to renovate the house first," he said as we walked to our car. And I had my eye on that new Porsche. I barely heard him, my mind on the letter burning a hole in my purse. Eleanor had always been kind to me, but we weren't particularly close. What could she have to say that required privacy? That evening, after James had gone to bed, I sat in our home office and carefully opened the envelope. The paper inside was thick, expensive, and covered in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "My dear Rachel, if you're reading this, then James has brought you to sign the inheritance papers. Before you do, there are things you need to know. I've watched you these past 5 years, seen how hard you tried to fit into our world. I've also seen how my grandson treats you, the subtle cruelties, the dismissals, the way he takes you for granted. You deserve better. James doesn't know this, but I've had him watched. The photographs enclosed will show you exactly what kind of man you married. What you do with this information is your choice. But know this, the inheritance clause about divorce was written with you in mind. Sometimes we need an escape route to find our true path. Whatever you decide, know that you have an ally in me, even from beyond the grave. With love and hope, Eleanor." My hands trembled as I opened the second envelope. The photographs spilled out onto the desk and my world tilted on its axis. There was James in dozens of compromising situations, and kissing a blonde woman outside an upscale restaurant, entering a hotel with a redhead, having dinner with a brunette, his hand intimately placed on hers. The dates stamped on the photos showed a pattern stretching back years. I sat there for a long time, staring at the evidence of my husband's betrayal. Pieces started falling into place. The late nights at the office, the business trips that seemed to multiply, the way he always kept his phone face down. But what hit harder was Eleanor's foresight. She had known, had seen through James's facade, and had created this escape route specifically for me. I thought about the inheritance clause with new understanding. If I divorced James now, after he'd signed those papers, the entire $10 million would be mine. He would lose everything, not just his grandmother's money, but his pride, his standing in society, everything he valued. The pain of betrayal mixed with something else, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. Before marrying James, I'd had dreams of my own. I'd wanted to start a boutique publishing house, giving voice to authors who struggled to find mainstream acceptance. But James had dismissed it as a cute hobby, and slowly, I'd let that dream fade. Now, staring at the photos, I felt those old ambitions stirring. With $10 million, I could not only start my publishing house, but make it something spectacular. My phone buzzed. A text from James, who was at a late meeting. "Don't wait up, darling. Important client dinner." I looked at the most recent photo, dated just last week, showing exactly what kind of dinner he was having. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. Taking out a fresh piece of paper, I began to write. Eleanor had given me the weapons. Now it was up to me to plan the perfect strategy. James thought he had everything under control, but he was about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating the women in his life. I worked through the night, making calls to old contacts in the publishing industry, researching business plans, and most importantly, finding the best divorce lawyer in the city. By sunrise, I had a clear path forward. James came home early that morning, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't even glance my way as he headed upstairs to shower. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I'd found. "Hello, is this Claire Bennett's office?" "Yes, I'd like to schedule an urgent consultation with Ms. Bennett regarding a divorce." The wheels were in motion. James had no idea that his grandmother's final gift wasn't the money. It was giving me the power to reclaim my life. The divorce papers sat in my desk drawer for exactly 1 week. I wanted to time everything perfectly, and Christmas morning seemed fitting. James always said it was his favorite holiday. I watched him that week, really watched him for the first time in years. The way he strutted around our house, making grand plans for his inheritance. The casual cruelty in how he dismissed our housekeeper's holiday bonus request. The smug smile when he thought I couldn't see him texting his latest mistress. "We should have a party," he announced at breakfast, 4 days after signing the inheritance papers. "Something spectacular to announce our good fortune." I nodded, buttering my toast. "When were you thinking?" "New Year's Eve. We'll invite everyone who's anyone." He barely looked up from his phone. "The Hartleys, the Petersons. Oh, and that new client of mine, Victoria. She has excellent social connections." Victoria, the blonde from the photos, I presumed. My hand tightened around the butter knife. "Sounds perfect," I said, keeping my voice light. "I'll start planning." He finally glanced up, surprised. "You will? That's unusually helpful of you." I smiled. "Well, it's a special occasion." The next few days passed in a blur of careful preparation. I moved money into separate accounts that James couldn't access. I secured a new apartment under a different name. I had long conversations with Claire Bennett, my divorce lawyer, making sure everything was airtight. Christmas Eve, James insisted on hosting his family for dinner. I played the perfect wife one last time, serving his favorite dishes, laughing at his father's terrible jokes, pretending I didn't notice his mother's backhanded compliments. "You've done well for yourself, James," his father said over dessert. "The inheritance, the beautiful home." But he waved vaguely in my direction. "Suitable wife." James beamed. "Everything's falling into place exactly as I planned." I excused myself to make coffee, fighting back a laugh. Men like James and his father never saw it coming. They were so convinced of their own superiority that they couldn't imagine being outmaneuvered by someone they considered beneath them. That night, after his family left, James was in an unusually good mood. He even kissed my cheek before bed, the first time he'd shown me any affection in months. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "You know, with the inheritance coming through, maybe we should think about having children. Carrying on the Montgomery name and all that." I lay awake long after he started snoring, thinking about Eleanor's letter. Had she known her grandson would try to trap me further once he got the money? Had she seen this coming too? Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. I was up early setting the stage. Coffee brewing, breakfast laid out, presents arranged under the tree. I wanted everything to be perfect. James stumbled downstairs around 9. Already reaching for his phone. "Merry Christmas," he mumbled. "Merry Christmas," I replied, handing him a coffee. "I have something special for you." He perked up. "A present?" "You could say that." I pulled out an envelope tied with a red ribbon. "I've been planning this for a while." He took it, smiling. "You didn't have to." His voice trailed off as he opened the envelope and saw the divorce papers. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. "What is this?" he demanded. "I think you know exactly what it is." I took a sip of my coffee. "When you might want to read the inheritance clause again." Very carefully. He stared at me, then lunged for his phone. I watched calmly as he pulled up the documents, his face growing paler by the second. "You can't," he whispered. "You wouldn't." I stood up, walking to my purse. "These might interest you too." I spread Eleanor's photos across the table. "Your grandmother was quite thorough." James looked like he might be sick. "Rachel, wait. We can talk about this. Whatever you want. A bigger allowance, a new car, Anything. Anything except fidelity, respect, or basic human decency. I shook my head. It's too late, James. The papers are already filed. He jumped up, knocking over his chair. I'll fight this. I'll get the best lawyers. You'll what? I interrupted. Explain to everyone how you lost $10 million because you couldn't keep it in your pants. Tell them how your grandmother outsmarted you from beyond the grave. Go ahead. I'm sure the society pages will love that story. His face turned an alarming shade of red. You planned this. You're nothing but a gold digger. I laughed, actually laughed. No, James, I'm something much worse. I'm the woman you underestimated. Picking up my purse, I headed for the door. Oh, and you might want to cancel that New Year's Eve party. I don't think you'll be in a celebrating mood. Where are you going? He shouted after me. To start the life you never thought I was capable of having. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and social fallout. James fought the divorce, of course, but Eleanor's documentation was ironclad. Claire Bennett, my lawyer, was ruthlessly efficient in dismantling every argument his legal team tried to make. The society circles James had once dominated buzzed with the scandal. His mistresses, confronted with the photos, turned against him one by one. Victoria, the blonde, even gave an interview to a gossip column, detailing their affair in embarrassing detail. Meanwhile, I focused on building my publishing house. The first office I leased was small but perfect, bright and airy, with big windows and endless possibility. I hired a team of young, hungry editors who shared my vision for amplifying underrepresented voices. 6 months after that Christmas morning, I sat in my office reviewing manuscripts when my assistant buzzed me. Ms. Waters? There's a James Montgomery here to see you. I looked up, surprised. I hadn't seen James since the divorce was finalized. Sent him in. He looked different, thinner, less polished. The arrogance had been replaced by something darker, more desperate. Rachel, he said, hovering in the doorway. You look, well. What do you want, James? He stepped inside, fidgeting with his tie. I need help. The family's cut me off. The firm, they asked me to take a leave of absence, something about moral character concerns. And I thought, maybe we could work something out. The inheritance, maybe we could share it. I leaned back in my chair, taking in the man I'd once loved, now reduced to begging for scraps. No, I said simply. But the money is being put to good use, James. We're publishing authors who deserve to be heard. We're making a difference. I stood up. That's what your grandmother wanted, for her fortune to do something meaningful, not fund your affairs and ego. He stared at me for a long moment. You've changed. No, I corrected him. I've always been this person. You just never bothered to see it. After he left, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out Eleanor's letter. The paper was worn now from multiple readings, but her words still brought comfort. Sometimes we need an escape route to find our true path. She had given me more than money. She had given me the push I needed to become who I was meant to be. In trying to secure his inheritance, James had lost everything. But I had gained something far more valuable than $10 million. I had found myself. 1 year to the day after that fateful Christmas morning, I stood in a packed auditorium, preparing to launch our publishing house's first major release. A memoir by a brilliant young writer who'd been rejected by every major publisher. Looking out at the crowd, I spotted a familiar face in the back. Mr. Patterson, Eleanor's lawyer, gave me a small nod. Next to him was an empty seat with a single rose. Eleanor's favorite flower. As I stepped up to the podium, I smiled, thinking of how different my life had become. James had thought the inheritance was his happy ending. Instead, it had become my beginning. Welcome, everyone, I began. Today, we're not just launching a book. We're launching a new chapter in publishing, one that believes every voice deserves to be heard. The applause washed over me, and in that moment, I sent a silent thank you to Eleanor. She had known what I needed before I did. Not just an escape route, but a launch pad. James' Christmas gift had been divorce papers. But Eleanor's gift had been something far more precious, the chance to write my own story.